All right, what is up, Inner Circle family? Excited to be with you guys to kick off week number 7. Man, we have gone, it seems crazy that we are coming to a close of the Inner Circle. We have covered so much information. I don't know about you guys, but I have had such a blast in the process working with you guys. The Q&A sessions and just hearing all the success stories has been truly inspiring for me. And just talking with Trisha and Ruth, overjoyed at the results that so many of you are experiencing. And so I just want to say congratulations for those of you who are, still working at it, haven't had a breakthrough yet. We are not losing steam this week. We're going to continue with the care method, specifically the E in enrollment. We're also going to go through the final 2 levels of leadership, and I am going to go through with something with you guys that is all about execution and transforming your life in every area of life. So I am pumped to get into that this week. And so I just want to say, before I turn it over to Trisha and Ruth, I just got to say how proud I am of you guys. I mean, I just literally, right before we got started, I got another message from someone who did their very first live. And what this business is all about, I mean, specifically in network marketing, it's stepping out of your comfort zone. And the more you step out of your comfort zone consistently, the bigger your comfort zone grows. And so I know a lot of you have expanded your comfort zone in a great way. And a lot of you have expanded your mind. And the thing that my mentor said many years ago, he said, once the mind expands, it doesn't contract. And so congratulations on expanding your mind throughout the process here. And my coaching for you is just never end this process. Continue with a fascination of learning. Continue to expand your mind, because once it expands, it doesn't contract. And so, so pumped for so many of you. And so I'm going to get myself out of the way and turn it over to Trisha and Ruth. Thank you guys for being on. Thank you for your contribution. And everyone has fallen in love with you guys. So I will turn it over to you guys.
Hey,
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
And it's been so much fun being here. I agree with you. The best part is seeing the growth with people and the Q&As and hearing the stories. And I can't believe it's week 7 either. Ruth and I were talking about that earlier. It's so crazy.
I don't know where time has gone, but we're excited for tonight because we're talking about the enroll phase tonight. And I don't know about you, Trish, but back when I first started in network marketing, the enroll phase was when I used to freeze, when I used to have those discussions about objections and closing and all of that. And it really made me nervous. So we're going to be sharing some things with you tonight, some scripts. So make sure you take some notes. But we also want to let you know that you have access to Millionaire School, where Matt has so many ways of handling objections, scripts, tools for you. So if you don't know how to get access to that, just email support@mattmorris.com. We'll make sure that you get access to that, but just know there's tons of resources there as well.
Absolutely. And so excited to dive into this because Ruth, you're absolutely right. Like, I remember when I first got started, I was scared to death to sit down and close people and ask those questions. But as you and I know, through the training and the coaching and everything we've done, that when you can learn it and practice it enough, it gets so simple. It really does. And so I'm excited to share some of those nuggets tonight.
So I'm going to be the official screen sharer tonight. And
thank goodness you always do that. All right, let's see here. Yay. So like Matt mentioned before, tonight we are talking about enroll, mastering the enroll phase. And I don't know about you, but that's the most fun phase because that means your business is really growing. And so we're going to dive into this. So obviously the first thing we're going to be covering tonight about closing is the psychology of closing, right? And when you can really master this, you're going to find it's really not that hard. And I think you're going to feel a lot better after we cover what we covered tonight.
And second of all, we're going to cover objections. So objections are often an automatic response that people have, and you're going to become an expert at handling objections.
And we're going to teach you, how to handle those. So practice objection handling scripts so that they roll off your tongue like a pro. Because I know that was one of the things I would hear my mentor, talk, and I thought, oh my gosh, he can overcome every objection. Like, how does he do that so easily? But we're going to share tips with you that are going to make it easier, but also just make it feel natural when you do it.
And we're also going to share the top reasons people say no. And when you learn to understand those reasons, then you'll really have much more easy conversations that just flow when you truly understand what the objection really is.
So first of all, the psychology of closing. Okay. So think about this. Your business, you've got a team and a customer base that will grow exponentially if you become good at closing the deal. So it doesn't matter whether you're talking about products. It doesn't matter about whether you're talking about the opportunity. It's really understanding the psychology behind it and knowing the reasons that people don't close. Despite doing all the right things, sometimes can, make you feel badly, right? Because you're like, gosh, I feel like I'm doing all the right things, but then they said this and I didn't know what to say next, right? But what ends up happening is so many times people have that fear of rejection, right? They have that fear of failure. They have these guilty feelings and they end up not asking for those orders. And I remember when I got started, I would ask I would talk all this information and I was just waiting for that person to go, okay, sign me up, because every once in a while you would get that person. But what I learned was that if you don't ask for it, most people aren't going to say that. And so I left so many deals on the table because I was afraid of what the answer was going to be, right? Because it could be this rejection or failure, or just these guilty feelings that maybe you're not doing things the right way. When really, when you can just get into someone's mind a little bit and understand asking those questions, you can really feel so much better about it and also not feel weird about it.
So here's some secrets to becoming a better closer. Number one is check in with your why. So sometimes we hold ourselves back in fear of loss or fear of rejection. And if we remind ourselves why we're really doing this, then it's a lot easier to overcome those fears. Like, it becomes more important than the fear itself to actually ask for the sale, ask for the person to get started. Check in on your belief system around your opportunity and your products. And if you find one of those two is lacking a little bit, then get around people who have had great testimonials, great results in their business to help build up your belief. Next, assure your prospect will buy or join until they tell you no. So assume that. So don't go into the conversation thinking that, oh, they're never going to buy or they're never going to join, because that's what you're going to end up having happen, right? So assume they're going to get started, and that'll give this confidence, this energy that people will be more likely to say yes. Next is practice. And I can't stress this enough. Practice asking closing questions. And the more you practice, the more you'll get comfortable with them. So practice means finding, maybe one of your accountability partners, or finding a friend, or finding a teammate in your company, and just practice asking questions, because the easier they roll off your tongue, the more natural they sound, and they don't sound weird to your prospect. So what's a closing question? It could look like, what questions can I answer for you today to help you get started? As easy as that. Or, are you ready to get started? I remember one of the very first closing questions I ever asked was, would you like to put that on a Visa or a MasterCard? And I was really scared to ask that, but the more I said it, the easier it became. How about, if you were to get started today, which pack would you pick? Right? So those are all examples of closing questions. And always remember that most people don't like to make decisions. So we have to ask. And like Trish said, if you don't ask, you're probably leaving a lot of sales, a lot of potential business builders on the table.
That's so true, Ruth, because it's one of those things that it might scare you the most, but it's also going to make you the most, right? When you really get good at it. Next, we want to talk about handling the objections. Now, this part is where I think everybody gets scared because it's inevitable that you're going to get objections. There's no way everybody's just going to watch a presentation or talk to you and you answer a couple questions and they go, okay, yep, sign me up. Like, you would think it would be that way because we know our opportunities are that great, right? But that's not how it works. And so it's just a natural part of the process, and really understanding your mindset behind, and getting that in your mindset, right? And expecting that there are going to be questions is also going to make it a lot easier for you, because when you expect people to have questions, one, you can automatically start being a little bit more relaxed. And again, the more you practice the objection handling, you can also be more relaxed when they come up. And also what happens the more you practice them, again, you're going to be so much more confident that even if you're shaking inside, right, your prospect's not going to know because you've gotten really good at answering those questions. And so, I remember so many times, back in those beginning days when I had the chicken list or something, and someone said, well, if you don't ask them, it's already a no. And I'm like, well, that's true. I have nothing to lose then, right? Because if the answer is a no, if I don't ask, it could possibly be a yes, right? I've got a 50-50 chance when the time comes. And so you have nothing to lose. And so just really making sure you're asking and then practicing these objections is going to be huge for you.
And also, when you think about objections, think about your own response, right? When someone asks you if you want to buy something or do something, what is your first response? And a lot of people is, well, let me think about it. Or they have some sort of standard thing that they naturally ask, even if they don't really mean it. So think about what your own response is, that auto response when you feel like someone's going to ask you to do something or a sale coming on. That's usually not the real reason, right? So people are like that. So we want to give you the tools to help you handle those things. So here are the typical objections that we all hear in network marketing. We all have to deal with. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I have to ask my spouse. I've got to think about it. And is this thing one of those pyramids? So those are the typical objections that we're going to talk about tonight.
And gosh, when you get good at covering those right there, game over, because the rest are pretty simple, right? So here's the thing. The first objection that somebody gives to you rarely is the real objection, right? Most of the time people are telling you something because they just want to end it, right? They just want to end the conversation. Maybe they're just busy, who knows? But the thing is you want to get to the real deal. You want to know why, what the real reason is that somebody is saying no to you, or what the real reason is that someone's giving you that objection. So, know that people have an auto response objection. And like Ruth said, think about what you say, right? Like if somebody asked you to buy something, what would be the first thing that you would say? Not because you're not really interested, but maybe because you're just not taking the time to be interested, right? And you've got to understand that other people might be doing the same thing. But truly being able to dig in a little bit deeper, being able to know what to say is going to allow you to really get down to that real objection. And we're going to give some examples of that.
So here's the I have no money objection. And I'm sure you've all heard this before. If you've asked for the sale, you've probably heard this. So I don't have the money typically means that you didn't establish enough value. So people will only move forward when they perceive that the value is greater than what the cost is. So here's some of the phrases that we typically use when we're handling the money objection. So things like, if you could put a dollar value on it, what would it be worth to you to have whatever they said they wanted to have, whether it was better health, more energy, weight loss, more money, retire wealthy. What would the dollar value be? What dollar value would you attach to that? And in the case of weight loss, how many pounds would you have to lose to justify the cost? What have you paid for before to lose the weight? Now, this can be applied to any kind of product, right? If you did have the money, would you get started today? I love that question because it really helps determine whether money is the real objection. If they say no, then there's another objection other than money. If they say yes, that's your opportunity to say, okay, well, let me help you get resourceful in finding the money.
I love that. And another one I love to ask too, Ruth, when it comes to the money is, how long do you want money to be the issue? How much longer do you want it that $100 is going to keep you from having the freedom you want in your life? Really kind of putting it back on them, because then they have to stop and think about it. So all of those questions that were there are going to make people think about it a little bit more. The next one is, I don't have the time. Now, the time objection typically means one of two things. And most of the time, honestly, it's a smokescreen for something else, or they're already overwhelmed by life, right? But really, when it comes down to it, it's really about helping people problem solve on this. And a big comeback that I like to say when someone says they don't have the time is, if I could show you a way to do, XYZ, to have whatever they've told you, and fit it into your already busy schedule, would that be something you'd be interested in looking at? And a lot of times they're like, oh yeah, it's just, they don't know how to break their day down. And so we're going to share a few more things here with you too that can help overcome that time objection.
So the first thing is, you want to get to the root of the problem. So the time objection is usually a business objection. It's not typically a product objection. So get to the root of the problem by asking, if you did have the time, would you get started? No different than the money objection. If you did have the money, would you get started? So that's going to be like a little pattern interrupt that makes people stop and think yes or no. Right? So if they say no, then time is not the objection, and you have to keep digging to find out what the real objection is. If they say yes, then they are likely legitimately busy. And at this point, just like Trish said, you can ask questions like, are you okay with being this busy for the rest of your life? In a perfect world, if you had more time, what does your day look like? What does your life look like? What would you be doing, right? So digging in to find out whether it's the real problem, and then helping problem solve and getting them to see a bigger picture is what's going to help open their eyes to potentially saying yes.
And I hope this is making sense to everybody too, because I bet, I don't know about you, but Ruth, I know I've used those excuses many times with people, not necessarily with this business, but just in other things. So it's just so common for us to just say those things.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, the next one we're going to dive into is, I have to ask my spouse. Now, this one always gets me good because so many times, especially women, in the business, they're usually the decision makers in the house. So it's kind of interesting when they say this, but there's so many great ways that we can come back on it. But this is a common objection, and it's typically a way to buy time or avoid making the decision in the moment, and sometimes people it's just a good way for them to say. Now, I will say legitimately, in some relationships, people don't make buying decisions over a certain dollar limit without consulting their significant other. Nothing wrong with that. And you always want to be respectful to that when somebody does that, because if you're not, you're really kind of crossing a line. It's super important to stay respectful with that. But your job is to find out what the real objection is, and really who the real decision maker is in that household.
So I have to ask my spouse how to handle this objection. And this one was one I typically felt kind of uncomfortable with, because I always felt like I was, maybe stepping over the line a little bit. But there's great ways to do it that are really easy, that will be comfortable, and you won't feel sort of awkward. So I like to say, if your spouse was a yes, would you be a yes? Would you get started right away if your spouse was a yes? And that's going to help you get to the real objection. Do they really have to ask their spouse, or is it really them saying, I'm not sure, I'm going to put this one over on my spouse? So asking that question is going to help you determine whether the spousal objection is the real one. If the answer is yes, the objection might be real. If the answer is no, you have to ask questions to really help determine what the real objection is.
So here are some questions you can ask. So what do you think your spouse will say, right? So this is a good one because you want to kind of get an idea of whether the spouse is going to be supportive or not supportive, right? It's going to, again, help you. And if the answer is a little less than positive, you want to ask your prospect and the spouse to come on a call with you, like maybe a three-way Zoom or a three-way call. And this is important for a couple of reasons. One, because if the information is coming from you, a third party versus the spouse, their spouse is going to be much more inclined to potentially listen to the information and take it for what it is. The other thing is that when you give somebody some information and they go and deliver it to their spouse, they're not delivering it the way you delivered it. And so one of the things that I always like to say is, would you, we've talked a lot today and I've given you a lot of information and answered a lot of questions. Would it be fair to say that, if we got on a three-way call, I could deliver this information to your spouse so he could hear what you heard? Or, would it be fair to say that you might not be able to give him all the facts and he's going to have some questions that you're not prepared to answer yet? And give some language like that for them to use to make it easier for them to get the spouse on with you. And what's, really it does too, is it just makes it so that one, they're a little more comfortable. And then two, it takes some of the pressure off of them of needing to have all those answers for the spouse that they're probably not going to have anyway. Because I know that, when you don't really have the answers and you're kind of like trying to remember or dig for the information, what that says to the spouse is that, you don't have all the information and maybe this isn't such a great idea after all. So you want the spouse to be confident as well, and you being able to deliver that information will make that possible.
It's kind of like that old game we used to play in grade school, telephone, where you would go around with the message and by the end, it never sounded the same.
Not even close.
No. So this is another one I love. And this is an objection that I typically use. I catch myself doing this sometimes. When I feel a sale coming on, I go, oh, I've got to think about it. But then I have to stop myself and say, well, what is there to think about? So it's a natural response sometimes. So think back to a time when you wanted to do something, you thought about it, pondered it, and didn't take action. So why didn't you take action? You were likely uncertain of the outcome. So if it's the real objection, you likely didn't answer all of the questions that the person had in their head, right?
So a little bit more about the have to think about it. So again, this objection is typically either a stall technique or an auto response, right? Or you have not instilled enough certainty about the outcome using your product or joining your opportunity. And so this is why it's really important a lot of times as you're giving the information or asking the questions to give some examples that kind of include them that help paint that picture, because it's going to help keep this from happening so much. But start with a pattern interrupt, right? So if you don't have to think about it, would you get started, right? If you didn't have to think about it today, would you get started? And then you can ask, if you knew absolutely for certain that, blank would allow you to blank, would you get started? And this is a really good one because when they say yes, of course, then you can share a testimonial or results or, money back guarantee, but it allows you to know too that they really wanted it. And it also makes them kind of think about the reasons that they told you that they wanted to get started to begin with. Most of the time right here is they're fearful. They're fearful that they're going to fail. They're fearful that they're not going to have the success they're looking for. So being able to get a yes from this is a really big one.
So a little bit more about the I have to think about it, because I think we hear that one a lot as well. So if you've got good rapport with your prospects, so maybe your friends, or maybe you've had a number of conversations and you've got a good thing going on, you can just flat out ask, what specifically is it that's holding you back from getting started today? And by asking that that phrase in that way, using the word specifically, you're more likely to get a direct answer than if you have this really broad question. So I love that question. If I feel like I have good rapport with someone, I'll ask them what specifically is holding you back, and then we can have a real conversation about it.
Love it. Oh, this one's a great one, right? You guys have heard this one, I know. And is this a pyramid scheme? Well, first of all, the objection is typically driven from incorrect information your prospect has heard, or a prospect is looking for a way not to act. And so one of the things I like to say, because what I have found is that most of the time people know someone who, have joined or signed up for something, never did anything. And so then they lost money, right? So, I always find out, hey, if you had an experience before, were you with another direct sales company, or are you with another network marketing company, or did you have a friend, trying to get a little more information on that. But the other thing, and this is really the best way to deal with the objection, is to confidently say no. And there have been many times that I've laughed, especially if it's somebody who I know, and I'm like, seriously, like, you know me, right? Like, I'm a pretty intelligent person. Do you think that I would do something that was a pyramid scheme? Because those are illegal. And I don't do illegal things, so I try to joke about it a little bit. But a lot of times, one of the things you could say is, pyramids are illegal and your company has been in business for however many years and has done X in income worldwide. Again, if you've been around that long, you're not going to have a problem with being a pyramid scheme, because you wouldn't still be in business if you were a pyramid scheme, right? The government would have shut you down by now, or the FTC. But think about this too. Your best defense is also a good offense. So being knowledgeable about the network marketing industry. Most people don't realize that it's a $178 billion industry worldwide, and it's growing, right? It's bigger than the NFL, the movie, and the music industry combined. So knowing some of these facts to kind of share with people, but putting them in a question, like, did you know that, the network marketing industry is a $178 billion industry? Most people don't know that, but it's going to show that you've got knowledge, and also that you've got confidence behind what you're saying.
That's awesome, Trish. And you know what else I love about what we've been teaching here is the more you're online, the more you're showing up, the more you're doing lives, you're going to get very, very few people with this objection. In fact, like these days, I never hear it anymore. So the more you're building your brand, the less you're going to hear this objection.
Yeah, because you're hearing from the right people at this point.
So when all else fails, you've answered every single question, you've handled every objection like a pro, you still can't get a yes or no, it's time to take the gloves off. Your goal is just to get a yes or no. In the end, that's all it is. And you just can't imagine spending any more time with this person.
So sometimes you really need to take control of the conversation. And I know in my early days that I struggled here. Because I was so nervous and didn't quite have the confidence yet, right? So one of the things you can do is obviously say their name. You told me you wanted to, and state what they shared with you, right? I've answered your questions that you've had and showed you how other people have gotten the results, right? Including myself. So that's one of the things you could say to start out the conversation with. And then honestly, I could answer questions all day, but it comes down to whether you want to blank, or are you happy and satisfied staying where you're at, right? That's one that gets people. And one of the ones I love to say is, listen, you don't need to make a change, but let me ask you a question. Is what you're doing today going to get you where you want to go 12 months from now? And if so, are you happy with being in the same place 12 months from now? That's a big one that will get people, because they're like, ooh, I don't want to be in that same spot next year. And that will help make them turn. But again, it's making them think about it for themselves instead of you, like we've talked about before, the asking versus telling. When you're asking these questions, they have to come up with their answer. You're not telling them the answer. It makes them think a little more. Another question to take control: if you don't want to, right, lose weight or make money, Let's get you some product or get you enrolled. If you don't want what you described to me in the beginning of our conversation, then I can't really help you, right? So just making sure, let them know, hey, it's okay. No big deal. If you don't really want that, it's not a big deal. And then a lot of times what happens when you do that is people get that fear of loss and they're like, no, I didn't say I didn't want to do it. Oh, so you do want to do it, right? But when you take it away, it's so crazy how all of a sudden people will want it back. So it really allows you to take control over the conversation, even though it sounds like you're giving up on them. Another one is, are you serious about losing weight or making money? Or how serious are you about, losing weight or making money? And wait for the answer. With all of these, wait for the answer, right? You don't want to talk. After you ask that question, you kind of zip it and just wait for them to respond.
I love that, Trish, because the first person who talks after the question loses.
Pretty much.
It's hard. Sometimes you're sitting there and the silence seems like it goes on forever, but don't be the first to say something after you ask a question.
Yeah, for sure.
So here's the main reasons people say no. They're not as committed to the change that they originally said that they wanted. You haven't built enough know, like, and trust yet. They don't believe that what you presented them will work for them, or no is just one of those automated responses. So we hope you got some value from these phrases. And remember, in Millionaires School, you have access to a ton of resources that Matt has put together in terms of dialogue and scripts. So make sure you check that out. And I'm going to hand it over to Matt now. I'm going to stop this screen share and hand it over.
All right, awesome, powerful stuff. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. I'll give you a couple things from my perspective that I've just learned over the years. And the first one was probably the hardest thing for me to really get, and it was just to trust myself in the process, because I didn't trust myself for so long, and I would present the business to people, but I was hesitant to ask closing questions, or I was hesitant to overcome the objection. Like, I would just believe their objection, like, oh, I don't have the money. And I'd be like, okay, cool. And that was really just an excuse to procrastinate. So just understand that a lot of times the objection they give you is just an excuse to procrastinate, because people live in the land of maybe instead of the land of yes or no, right? And so we want to encourage them to live in the land of yes or no, and be okay with the no, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the thing, is just trust yourself that if you ask the closing questions, you'll be able to close the people who are closable. And it all happens. There's an art and science to it. Just like everything, there's an art and science. And so you've learned a lot of the science. You can go into Millionaire School and learn more of the science there. But as much science as you learn, you never get the art unless you actually do it, unless you go out and get rejected. And so one of the biggest challenges that we do as leaders is helping our teams overcome misconceptions like, we shouldn't show the business to people if they're going to say no. It's like the way I would operate is I'd be here in the middle, and then rejection would be on one side, and getting yeses was on the other. And so I wanted to avoid the no's and only get yeses, and that's not the way it works. The way it works is you're here, and then the no's are here, the yeses are here, and so you've got to go through the no's to get to the yeses. And it's the only way we succeed, and it's the only way we empower other people to succeed. And so trust yourself in the process. You'll get the art. You can't not get good at this stuff. You can't not get good. You have to. Even if you suck at playing the piano, if you practice an hour a day, you're gonna get good. You can't not get good. It's the same thing with closing. The last thing I want to say is my rule number one is to have fun, have a good time with the prospect. And so when you're having fun, when you make it like, all right, my goal here is to have a good time. You're going to close more people. You just are, because you're going to be less needy. And you can get away with crazy things as you develop more know, like, and trust. And, you can go off script a little bit. Like, you can get to the point where if you have rapport with someone and they say, I don't have the time. I can't tell you how many times when I've had rapport with someone and they've said, I don't have time, I just smile and I cock my head. I go, well, I call BS on that one, because you've been with me for the last hour. You definitely have the time. What's really going on, right? And just getting to the root of the answer. So have fun with the process and just understand you're going to get good. You're going to get to the point where you'll close anyone who's closable. Now, not everyone is closable, and the best in the world will close maybe 1 out of 3 if you're the best in the world, right? So you're going to get rejected 2 times more than you're going to get a yes if you're the best, right? So be okay with the rejections and go through the process. And so what I'm going to go through is I'm going to share my screen with you here, and we're going to get into continuing the laws of leadership in network marketing. And so let me pop this up, and let me real quick minimize this. For some reason, every time let me try it a different way and see if this will work. I lose my mouse. There, I think that looks a little bit better. I still lost my mouse, but hopefully everything looks good. So as we went through, so everywhere from student to producer to leader producer to leader duplicator. So we covered the first 3 levels last week. This week, I'm going to cover the last 2 levels. And so we finished up with leader. And leader is where, you've got some duplication within your group. You're not free yet, but you've got some duplication in your group. And if you remember, how we advance from one level to the next level is simply helping people get to where we are. Right? Very, very simple. And so if you help enough, if you're a producer and you help several other people become a producer, you're now a leader. When you're a leader and you help several people get to that leader level, you're now a leader producer. And so what does it mean to be a leader producer? So this is where your group starts growing by multiplication. Okay, so you've got several leaders on the team. And if you remember from last week, the leader is where you got duplication, you got several producers, you've got some significant growth in your team. You're the energetic hub of your group, right? You're in the trenches, you're providing the charisma and, sales support, 3-way calls and Zooms, and you're doing presentations, right? You're looking for that next leader to rise up. Now, as a leader producer, you've got several of those leaders on your team. And so this is where you operate on a fairly high level with all 7 key skills. You don't really get to leader producer until you're pretty good with the 7 key skills. You don't necessarily have to have mastery in all 7. You might have, like, if I think about some leader producers, even leader duplicators, they may not be the most masterful when it comes to event promotion, or they may not be the most masterful when it comes to closing, but they operate on a high level with all 7. Now, as a leader producer, you must continue to be a student, a producer, and a leader. But now growth will continue in leader developed teams even when you're not present. Okay, so this is the first real feeling of freedom. And so this is where you've got a leader who's active, they're engaged, they're earning, a full-time income or close to a full-time income. Like, they're bought in, they're attending the trainings. You don't have, they're there. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to be there forever. You still need to be loving on them and developing them. And we'll talk about that in a second. But this is where, within that team, if you were to take off a month, not answer any calls, your income shouldn't really go down on that team. Okay. So at this phase, it's less about being dependent on the team, and it's more about pouring gas on the fire on those teams. Okay. Mentoring is going to play a very significant role as a leader producer. So this is why in the inner circle, we're overloading you with so much content, inner game content, external skills and social media recruiting content, leadership, development content, so that as a leader producer, you can know this stuff and you can be able to effectively train your organization on a lot of it. And so you're mentoring other people on your team, but it's also equally as important that you're continuing to get the mentoring yourself. And so you're looking for that $1 million earner in your upline, and you're, touching base on a regular basis, letting them know, hey, here's what's going on in my organization. What do I need to be doing? How do I need to be thinking? Getting that mentorship is very, very important at this level in order to go to the next level. Okay. Now, why does a leader producer stagnate? Okay. This is where it gets, some of it is not necessarily exactly what you're doing. It could be a system-wide, more of an issue, like a lack of or a poorly designed event system. Okay. So if you're part of a company, as an example, and there's not an event system, at this point in your career, you should be creating an event system. Like if your company, maybe they only do one event a year, and there's not a well put together event system. This is where you create it. Now, a lot of times what we're doing now is virtual. And so it may be your own virtual workshop, Super Saturdays, like where you're bringing in other people, promoting a Super Saturday training. That's the things that you're doing as a leader as well. And you're definitely doing as a leader producer. Okay. So that's something that I see leader producers stagnate. Their team stops growing, and, the attrition is about the same as retention, right? Your team's just kind of staying at the same level. Your volume's kind of staying at the same level. Why? One reason may be you don't really have an event system that's supercharging your people with belief and excitement, because what we have to understand, again, it's all about the psychology here, is actions follow feelings. What we do as leaders is we inject feelings into our organization, motivation, inspiration, training, so that they have feelings of confidence, feelings of motivation. And when you provide those feelings, they're more likely to go take action. And so it's just one of those things we have to be very aware of. Lack of mastery in the leadership development process. See, a lot of people have gotten to the level of leader producer, and they don't really understand the leadership development process. Like they've never been through a training like you're going through right now. They don't understand the 5 levels of leadership. They don't understand how to troubleshoot people at different levels. That's why in this coaching, yes, go through these modules and take notes on it, but go through it again. I mean, you have access to this training. So review it again as you start advancing in leadership. Go back and review this ever so often, because we need reminders. Okay. And so next is ego conflicts. This becomes a major, major issue, and a reason for lack of growth. And I could tell you story after story after story of people who get to the point where, they've got some leaders on their team. Now, as a leader producer, you're making some good money. You're certainly full-time. You're probably 6-figure, maybe multiple 6 figures a year at the leader producer level. And so what happens is you might have gone, or, whoever it is, that maybe they've gone from, not making a lot of money to suddenly they're making 100,000 a year, 200,000 a year, 250,000 a year, and they forget where they came from. And all of a sudden it's like my way or the highway. And, there becomes this ego conflict. Okay. So that's something you got to be aware of, is learning how to set the ego aside and love on your people. I'm going to give you a very quick secret, I think, to network marketing success. And it's this: fall in love with your organization and give them a reason to fall in love with you. I'll say that again. Fall in love with your organization and give them a reason to fall in love with you. Okay. So love on your people. It's almost like I sent an email the other day. It was about dating your downline. Not in a romantic way, but if you're dating someone in a romantic way, let's say you're in a new relationship, you're going to do thoughtful things. You're going to maybe write out cards or send them like sweet text messages, tell them why you appreciate them. Okay. And if you're not, they feel a little less appreciated. Okay. And so understand it's kind of a similar thing in your organization. Is so be reaching out and making your producers and your leaders feel special. Okay, date them in a non-romantic way. Send them little gifts from time to time. Shout them out on social media. Let them know why you appreciate them. Okay, and that is, I'm telling you, if you do those things right, when the conflicts arise, they're easy to dissipate because you've loved on them. Like they get, if maybe you butt heads, like you have a fight about something, you're butting heads, like a disagreement, but they know you really care about them, they're going to be okay with like butting heads and then hugging each other after. And I've had a lot of this over the years with upline and downline where we've butted heads and argued, and the net result at the end is we love each other. Okay. And so the next one is you've gone into management mode. Okay, this is all of the different levels. You get into management mode, it will destroy the business. Okay, because as soon as you get into management mode, your entire organization gets into management mode because your organization is watching you. And if they don't see you in personal production mode, they think it's not time to personally produce. So they go into management mode. And before long, your entire organization is in management mode. No one's really doing anything. So again, the question you ask yourself at the end of every week is, if everyone in my organization personally produced at the level I personally produced at, would I be making all the money that I want? Would my team be exploded in growth? And if the answer is no, you got to up the personal production. So what's the best way to motivate a team? Start a new team. Okay. Two things are missing. This is in troubleshooting your business, there's two things missing: fire and certainty. Okay. And having done network marketing for 26 years of my life, over 20 years full time, I have to watch myself on this all the time because it gets routine. When I'm doing a training like I'm doing with you right now, I got to remind myself that people need to feel my training. And if they don't feel my training, they're not going to be as moved. Okay. And so there's so many times in my network marketing career, like I'm warning you, you may be in student mode right now. Just understand, as you become a producer and a leader producer all the way up the chain, you got to remind yourself to get back to fire and certainty. Okay. And so this was probably, gosh, this is going back a couple of years. So a couple of years ago, I catch myself. I did a call in the morning and it was like a three-way call. I talked to someone, it went how it went, I got off, and it was just kind of like bland. And I got off the call going, man, I was not really good. Okay. And I made a conscious decision. I said, I'm going to up my fire and I'm going to up my certainty. And because like, I know I'm not moving people if I'm just like getting by, if I'm just going through the numbers, if I'm going through the motions, I'm not moving anyone. And so I consciously decide, all right, I'm going to up my game. So couple hours later, a call comes in. It was one of my guys that lived in Puerto Rico. So he calls me, he goes, hey, I want to introduce you to so-and-so. He's taking a look at the business. Great, put him on the phone. So we talk, and I just decided, man, I'm going to unload on this guy. I'm going to go with so much fire, so much certainty, to the point where he may think I'm a whack job, right? And I just like let it go. I let it rip. I talked about why I was so excited. And I talked about how, big of a business we're going to build together, and the business model and the products. And man, I just let it rip. And I was like, man, you're in great hands with my buddy here. I'll be the first one to welcome you to the team. Let's go crush it. Let's build it big together. Have a great night, man. And we got off the phone. So I get a call like 30 minutes later, and the guy who had put his prospect on the phone with me, he goes, dude, you'll never believe what just happened. The guy that I just put you on the phone with, not only did he join, he was going to go work on like an offshore rig, like an oil and gas deal. And like in like 2 days, he was going to go like be gone. Okay. And so I even talked about that on the call. I was like, go ahead and get in, get your products, like, get, and then go do your deal. Right. So he goes, dude, not only did he join, he quit his job to do the business full time. Now, I didn't tell the guy to join the business full time. I would have said, no, don't, right? Because I think it's foolish to go full time too early. And the only reason he did it is because I decided to show up with fire and certainty. And because I showed up with fire and certainty, he felt it. So understand as leaders, what moves people to action is the feeling that they get from your fire and your certainty. So if you're not having the kind of results you want, up your fire, up your certainty, and people feel that, okay? Sometimes on a scale of 1 to 10, you may think you're a 10, but to everyone else, you show up as a 6, okay? You may up your energy level to where you feel like you're a 13 and you show up as a 9 or a 10, okay? I would rather blow someone out of the water by being too excited than bore them because I got no fire and no certainty. So just understand that fire and certainty is everything in our business. Next is a lack of personal responsibility. This is where, and this is one of the big ones at leader producer, where you know a lot and you almost know too much, okay? And your upline, you don't think they're doing something right, or the company has something going on, the event system isn't going the way it should be, and you end up blaming someone other than yourself for your lack of success, okay? And I understand there's company challenges. I understand there's things like that go on, but I will tell you that because of taking full responsibility and teaching this to my organization, have been able to overcome some of the most insurmountable challenges imaginable. Like, you wouldn't even believe it if I told you, crazy things. But because we had a culture of accepting responsibility, if it's to be, it's up to me. No one controls my business but me, right? And so it's taking full responsibility, because as I've said before, power comes from responsibility. And if you're not taking 100% responsibility, you're saying, let me be powerless, okay? So this is one of the reasons why a leader producer stagnates. Another one is just not stepping into your power to lead powerfully. You have it in you to lead, but you don't. And this is why, you might get to leader producer, but in order to get to leader duplicator, you need to help people get to where you're at. And, this is where you start flying into other markets to pour gas on the fire. This is when, you're stepping up and you're doing advanced leadership training. And if you're not stepping up and doing those things, then you'll stay stagnant, because you're counting on someone else, and your upline is probably too busy to pour into your group with the size of group that you have. Because at this point, you got a big group, and your upline, likely they're working on other teams, not yours necessarily. They don't have the same time to pour into yours. So it requires you to step up and do what a leader duplicator would be doing, okay? And as you guys get into these levels, we'll have some, additional programs that you can plug into, and I'll be here to support you. What needs to be happening? So we talked about why leader producers stagnate. What do you need to be focused on? Okay, as always, being a student. It's the base of everything. At this point, you really need to up your student game. You need to up your investment into your own mind. I know I'm speaking to the choir. You guys are here in the inner circle. You spent a lot of money to be here, but understand, as you advance, you need to be investing more. Okay, motivating your teams by starting new teams. Again, the best way to motivate your group is to start a new group, and it's counterintuitive to what we think. Most of us think, oh, I need to support my teams even more. Yes, you do need to support your teams, but start new teams, okay? Next, troubleshooting stagnation in teams. Now, I will tell you, like, at this point, you're troubleshooting the leaders in your group. You're troubleshooting the producers in your group. You're troubleshooting the students with the group, the people you're working directly with, right? And if you're talking to a leader, more times than not, the stagnation is due to management mode. And if you go in and you ask, like, hey, how many personals did you put in the last month? If the answer is none or one, they need to be doing more. It's one of the reasons why the team's not duplicating and it's not growing, is because the leader got into management mode, and likely his people have gotten into management mode as well, okay? You're fine-tuning duplication systems. This is where, hopefully you've got a system in place for this, and, you're not needing to do too much, but as things start to change in the environment and things like that, there may be issues where you need to fine-tune those. Building belief in leaders is one of the biggest actions that you're doing. It's building relationships and belief in leaders. You're letting them know how powerful they are, why they have what it takes to go all the way. Like, you are really pouring into them, because what they need more than anything else is belief, right? Why do they need the belief? Because the belief is what produces the feelings, which produces the action. Okay. And so you're pouring belief into your leaders. You're mentoring leaders on their inner game. Okay. You're talking about a lot of the stuff that, we've learned here in the inner circle. You're holding them accountable to their own leadership development. Okay. You're being extremely confident, but you're staying humble and grateful. Okay. One of the things you got to be very careful of is showing up with a big ego, showing up as arrogant. You want to show up as humble and grateful and insanely confident as well. Okay. What else? You can't be concerned with wanting the glory personally, but rather giving it all away. And this is a trap. That as a leader producer, you're making 100 grand a year, 200 grand a year. It feels really good. You got maybe a company ring or, a big pin. You're being recognized globally. And it's easy to just take on all that glory. But if you want to advance to the next level, you need to really give it all away. You need to make the leaders on your team feel amazingly special. Okay. It's not taking away anything from you, but the more you give it away, the more glory you'll end up getting yourself. Solidifying relationships with your leaders. Because what we have to understand is that your leaders are going to go through crazy challenges without exception. Every one of them are going to go through a lot of challenges. So some of your time is going to be spent keeping your leaders out of the ditch of discouragement and the valley of death. What are these things? And so here's a visual. Take a picture of this. I've drawn this out more times than I can count. I would commit this process to memory here and use it as a leader. Okay, there's a road to success and there's a road to mediocrity. Okay, and on this road, just understand we don't stay at one level. We're either progressing towards success or we're moving towards mediocrity. You're never staying in the same level. You're going towards one of these. Okay, so how do you know that you're going towards one of these? Well, on the road to success, the shoulder is frustration. Okay, now the road is not straight like you see here. The road is actually really windy. And understand that when you got the gas on the pedal and you're going towards success, you're going to get on the shoulder. You're going to bump up against frustration. It's part of the process. And this is something that I've said at events and I've had people repeat it. I've said it on Zooms over and over and over. It's all part of the game. It's all part of the game. Okay. So understand that there's going to be frustration. Okay. There just is. And so you're letting people know that frustration is part of the process. And what happens is if you don't understand that it's all part of the game and you get frustrated, that frustration leads to more frustration, right? You get even more frustrated. And if you stay in frustration too long, you end up in the ditch of discouragement. This is where you start telling lies to yourself. Lies like, oh, it's too hard, or network marketing is not really worth it, or the opportunity isn't like what I thought it was, right? Because you've stayed in frustration so long, you end up in this ditch of discouragement. And so you want to stay out of the ditch of discouragement. One of the ways that we do that is just understanding that frustration is all part of the game. Now, how do you know that you're headed towards mediocrity? When you're spending too much time in comfort. Okay, the shoulder of comfort. And there's nothing wrong with being comfortable at times, right? Sometimes you're going to take your foot off the gas. You're going to slow down. You're going to enjoy life a little bit. But when you start doing that too much, it leads to the ditch of complacency. Now, this is where you're just happy with what life gives you. Like, hey, I got to 100,000 a year. I'm happy being here. I got to 40,000 a year. I'm happy being here. And see, what happens is if you're content with complacency, that's essentially the same thing. If you're content, if you're complacent, you're moving towards mediocrity. Your income's not going to stay where it's at. It's going to go backward. I had a great friend of mine, and I joined a company 3.5 years after it started. And one of the guys who was really crushing it worked really hard for a period of time, got to a little over 100,000 a year, maybe 200,000 a year. And he just decided to live in comfort. So started traveling all the time. They'd come to trainings, but that was about it. Like he just he had some leaders on his team that were producing. He had several leaders on his team. He was kind of a leader duplicator, and he just took off and traveled the world and lived like everyone looked at him and go, man, this guy lives an amazing life. But what ended up happening was his leaders went into management mode. They started going into comfort, and his business just decimated. Like his income went from a couple 100,000 a year likely to, not even full-time. Why? Because he got complacent. He got too comfortable. So one of the things that we're always doing is we're helping people stay out of that complacency. And how do we do that? We're helping people get a bigger dream. Dreams are the fuel that fire desire. Desire is the key to winning. And so we want to be pouring fuel on the fire and stoking people's dreams. Okay. And keeping people out of the valley of death. We've talked about the valley of death. There's an easy way out of it. And I'm going to give you another visual here in a little bit that'll make a lot of sense to you. So what else? You're continuing to develop your training abilities to touch, move, and inspire growth in your teams. Okay, so as a leader producer, you have leaders on your team, like they own their team, they're working with your team. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be reaching down and building relationships. Like I want to act as if my leader is going to be with me forever. Like he may be with me forever, or she may be with me forever, but it's not guaranteed. And so I'm always looking for other leaders below them that I can build relationships and solidify relationships with. So if the leader does leave, they're going to leave leaders below them. Okay. And so what we're doing as a leader producer is we want to be able to go in and pour gas on the fire. And so whether it's flying into a market, whether it's doing a Zoom training, whatever it may be, I will tell you, I've been able to build groups in so many different countries around the world. And I'll tell you one of the reasons is, one, I stepped into my leadership and I just decided to believe that I was good enough to grow those teams like crazy and fly into those markets to touch, move, and inspire people so that people make decisions like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this. And so this is where you want to show up with fire and certainty, okay? And what makes a great communicator, okay? So if you want to move people, what is it that moves people, okay? And I heard this from Tony Robbins. I heard it from another source. The numbers are slightly different between the two, but not much different, okay? 55% of what moves people is your physiology. 30% of what moves people is your tonality, and only 15% are the words that you say. So 85% of why someone has impacted you has nothing to do with the actual words that you say. It has everything to do with your physiology and your tonality. Okay, it's can they feel you? And I'm going to tell you a quick story. And you may think I'm crazy when you hear this story, but I got this CD. It was called Challenge to America by Glenn W. Turner. Now, if you don't know Glenn W. Turner's story, he had a company called Coscott Cosmetics, and he had a training called Dare to Be Great. Now, Coscott Cosmetics became, I believe, the second largest network marketing company in the world, and maybe the third, but I'm pretty sure it was the second. Crushing it. Now, Glenn W. Turner, who founded the company, was like a sewing machine salesman. I think he sold vacuum cleaners and things like that. And he had a speech impediment, a very severe speech impediment. And I listened to this CD, or it was a cassette, I think, back then, and I couldn't understand a lot of it. And I listened, but it motivated the heck out of me because of his energy. He had so much energy. And so I listened to this thing over and over. I must have listened to it 50 times. And I was just like, man, I want to be a communicator like him. Even though you can't understand what he's saying, I was moved by it. So I had it transcribed. I sent it to a transcriptionist. They typed it up. They sent me the transcript. Now they had messed up a bunch of the words, and I had learned what the words are because I just heard it so many times. I figured most of the words out. So I corrected everything, and then I read through it. And as I'm reading through the script, I'm like, this is not a good talk at all. Like, this is not good. It makes no sense. Like he starts one story and doesn't finish it and goes to a next one. And like, there's nothing in it that was like an aha moment. I read through this and I read through it like twice going, how was this my favorite speech of all time? It was because what moves people is all about your physiology and tonality. Now, you couldn't see the physiology, but you could feel it because apparently in this talk, he was like all over the stage, jumping up on a bar stool, like he was all over the place, right? It moved me, and it had nothing to do with the words. And when I understood that, it's not that you shouldn't focus on having powerful words, but understand that what's going to move people is your fire and your certainty. Okay, so don't worry so much about the words. Okay, focus on lighting people up. Next, you're traveling to other markets to pour fuel on the fire. Again, pandemic stuff's going on, but I'll tell you, there's no substitute for live events. If you have local groups and you can fly in and pour gas on the fire, it's one of the things that has made me so many millions of dollars is flying into other markets, spending a few days, doing trainings, just pouring gas on the fire. And so when I leave, the fire continues to burn. This is the kind of thing that you start focusing on as a leader producer. Okay. And you're identifying 3 to 6 committed leaders to rise up to your level. Okay. Again, we're always looking to replace ourselves. And so you're mentoring leaders on your team and holding them accountable for their leadership development so that they can rise up to your level. Now let's get into leader duplicator. This is typically the $1 Million Club. If you're not earning $1 million, you are very close to it. This is ultimate true financial freedom. On a day-to-day basis, you're insignificant to the growth of your organization in leader, producer, developed teams. I'll tell you, one of my favorite moments in network marketing was I was in Asia. I think I was in Hong Kong, I believe it was. We do an event, like 1,500 people. I think it was 1,500. It was a fairly, big room, did pictures, all this stuff. I trained for 2 days. It's Sunday night. I'm beat and I'm like hungry because I like skipped lunch. And so I go to the hotel, I go up to the executive level, and I just want to like eat, drink a beer and go to bed. And so I got my food, I got my beer, I'm walking to my table, and this guy stops me and he goes, "Hey, you're Matt Morris." And it was a Chinese guy. And I said, "Yeah, so you're at the event." And he says, yeah, I'm in your downline. I was like, "Oh, cool, awesome." And he says, he says his rank, which is the top rank in the company. Okay, just imagine whatever company you're in, the highest rank in the company, that's him. He's in my group. I've never met him. And then he says he has 20 others that have hit the top rank in the company. And I don't think I had met probably most of them, or maybe even any of them. Okay. I had never met the guy. I didn't know him from Adam. And, the guy's making over $50,000 a month. Okay. This is freedom. If you'll follow everything that we've taught you in the inner circle, if you'll follow the leadership development process, if you'll step into your power as a leader, if you'll apply the inner game strategies, the leadership strategies, and all this, this is what's possible. Is having people that are making tens of thousands of dollars a month and you don't even know who they are. Not because you don't want to, because they're on another side of the world, and it's literally $1 million earner under $1 million earner under multiple 6-figure a year earner under multiple 6-figure a year earner. This is what's possible. It's what happened when I grew a group of 2.5 million people. You just can't know everyone. So understand that's what's possible for you if you'll apply this. Okay, at this point, it's a lot more art than science. Okay, we've given you a lot of science, but there's also a lot of art. Okay, it's just knowing what to say. Like in the closing process, I know what I can say to different people because I've been doing it so long. I know, like, I can read people, and if they're dressed sharp, they talk fast, and they kind of like have a bit of an ego. If they say, "I got to talk to my spouse," I know based on, because I've worked with so many people like that, I can give them a funny look and go, "Don't you think she'll give you permission?" And they'll be like, I can challenge someone with that. Like, I would never teach anyone to say that because you really have to know the art. So just understand that at this stage, you're really starting to learn the art. And because you've developed so many leaders on your team, you're recognized globally. I mean, you are at events, like it is crazy. At this point, I'm telling you, when you get to this level, there is a level of self-sabotage that people go through because you're put on so much of a pedestal and you're semi-worship. Like people will meet you and burst into tears because of the impact you've made in their life. And they're putting you on a pedestal, and you're like me, I'm this normal, I still identify with being the nerdy kid in high school, right? But suddenly people are putting me on a pedestal, and it's a weird thing that you got to learn to deal with. You know, I went from speaking to 1,000 people in an event to 5,000 to 10,000 to 15 to over 20,000 people at events. It's crazy. So I'm excited because that's what some of you have in your future if you'll simply apply this consistently and follow the kind of coaching that we're giving you. Okay. What are the actions for growth? And so obviously being a student, at every level, you're a student. And as a leader duplicator, by the way, I think it said it on the screen, but I didn't mention it. At this point, you've created a movement, right? I mean, this is beyond you. At this point, you couldn't stop your income if you wanted. If you decided like, hey, I'm going to go to another company and I'm going to try and recruit my people away, not everyone's going to follow you. You couldn't stop your income if you wanted to at this point. It's a great place to be in. At this point, you are mentoring and developing the highest level leaders on your team. Okay, you're helping people take their business to the next level. Okay, building relationships, mentoring, building new leaders. Okay, this is where you can dramatically increase your income, is if you're willing to go all the way back down to the bottom and recruit another 30, 40, 50 people, create new producers, create new leaders, create new leader producers. See, it's kind of like, you know, in our business, it's like pushing a car up a hill. It takes a lot of effort to get that car up to the top of the hill. The top of the hill is when, you know, it starts rolling with or without you, right? When you get to the top of the hill, the great thing about our profession is there are no limits to the amount of income you can make. And once you've gotten to the very top of the hill, if you're willing to go back down to the bottom, you've built your muscles so strong. If you're willing to continue doing the work, the reason most leader duplicators don't continue to start new teams, it's not because they can, it's just because their life's so good. They're making $1 million a year. I don't need to go start new teams. But man, if you do, if you get a vision that is beyond just the money, it's crazy the kind of income that you can earn. And the more money you make, the more money you make, right? I mean, it is just like your skills have been developed. You can get the car up the hill another time much, much faster. This is where you're spending your time, a lot of time pouring fuel on the fire, you know, going in and doing a lot of trainings and presentations, road shows, things like that. You're furthering the vision of the company. At this point, you're typically on an advisory board. The company's asking you about making, you know, different changes and enhancements and product announcements and things like that. You're solidifying an addictive culture within your teams. Now, I think I emailed you guys the promo for this training here. I almost didn't talk about this because of the kind of culture that was created. People would say you guys are like cult leaders. And we're definitely not cult leaders by any stretch of the imagination, because most people still don't follow our coaching, right? They still are going to go do their own thing. So definitely not a cult, but we created such an undeniable culture that no matter what the challenges were, people just almost never left, right? How do you get that? How do you get that addictive culture? And, you know, I would be lying to you if I told you it was by accident. Super intentional. And so I'm going to teach you here quickly how to create an addictive culture within your team very intentionally. Okay. And so there are 6 human needs. I learned this from Tony Robbins years ago. 6 human needs that people have. And if you'll be conscious to these, you can create an undeniable loyalty with your team. And what Tony said years ago was that if you meet 3 of these at a high level, you create an addiction. And so you can actually meet these at a high level with pretty much all 6. Okay, so number 1 is significance. People will do more for significance than they will anything else, than they will the money, certainly. And so this is where you are recognizing people, you're making people feel special, you're creating and creating a movement. It's a movement that's bigger than any of us individually. And so people like to be part of that kind of culture of growing people. Like, I know within network marketing, whether people make money or not, when they plug into our training system, they're going to become a more powerful person in all areas of life. And so we meet significance at a very high level. Number two is certainty, like, hey, I'm going to get paid my commission every week or every month. We're going to have an event every quarter. We are like, going to do a team training every Monday night or a leadership call every Tuesday afternoon, whatever it may be. So you create certainty. Like, people need to have that level of certainty. One of that is this, that you're there, that you're solid. They need to feel like you're solid. You're not going anywhere, right? And that gives people certainty. See, it's a lot of people approach network marketing. They get into network marketing and their upline, maybe they don't feel they're like super solid. And it's kind of like walking out on a lake, a frozen lake, but it's only a couple inches thick. So they're walking really timidly. It's like really carefully, barely moving because they're just afraid the ice is going to crack. So you want to create a level of certainty that the ice is 5 feet deep. You can jump, you can drive a car, you could drive a bulldozer across this thing. It ain't going anywhere. And so that's one of the things I said, fire and certainty. Our job is to infect our team with certainty, undeniable levels of certainty, because when you give that, they stop walking timidly and they'll run. We want people running. Number three is variety. Okay, so this is where you inject some fun, like big events. You're going out, you're socializing, you might be doing team trips and different promotions from time to time to create some variety. We also get a lot of just variety because we have crazy things that happen. People tell us we're going to jail, or people join and they quit. Like, there's all these crazy stuff that happens. And so there's variety that's built in. Some of it isn't the variety we want, but it's there. Number four, we can definitely control this. It's love and connection. And so fall in love with your people, give them a reason to fall in love with you. Let me give you another secret here. This could never happen in network marketing. It would be against all ethical standards, right? So this could never happen. But what if every single month the company would allow the downlines to choose a new upline if they wanted to? Like, they could just leave your group and go join another group. How much more love would you put into your group? How much more of a connection would you put into your group? How many more trainings? How much more supportive would you be? How much more would you build the relationships? And so act as if people can just choose a different organization every month. Now, again, that could never happen, but if it could, would they continue to choose you? And if you're like, well, I don't know, you need to bump up some of these, okay? So number four is love and connection. Like, I'm all the time, I'm saying, I love you. Social media posts, like, I'm just saying it all the time. I'm falling in love with my group and I'm giving them a reason to fall in love with me. Now, what creates love? Like, let me ask you this. Those of you who have kids, why do your kids love you? Why do your kids love you? Because you love them first. You love them first. So love your team first. It is a great book. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it talks about how it's the leader's job to create the connection with the follower. Okay, it's the leader's job to create the connection with the follower. And so it's something that we need to be mindful of, is it's our job to facilitate those relationships. Now, sometimes, the people in your group, they're going to be very proactive. But when you get a producer and a leader on your team and they may not be super proactive, you be proactive. Okay. Number five is growth. Well, a basic human need is to grow as a person. And so that's why we have to create a culture of personal growth, because if you build people here, you'll build a big business. If you don't build people here, you won't build a big business. And so we create a culture of personal growth. That means you need to be growing. You need to be investing in yourself and promoting events and trainings so that your team's doing the same. And then number 6 is contribution. And this is an amazing thing that we have just built into network marketing, is the more people that you help, the more money you make. Literally, if you want to get rich in network marketing, the formula for that is helping people, being of huge contribution to other people. And it's like, wow, I love what I do, because fulfillment comes less from what you receive and more from what you give. And if you'll just focus on giving, you're going to get everything in return, and ultimately an incredible amount of fulfillment. Now, if I'm doing any kind of mentorship with a company owner and things like that, then I'm always going to recommend there's some type of foundation, there's some kind of cause, because you'll have people that will rally around the cause and they'll stay with your company forever if you've got some kind of cause as a company. And so what are the other actions for growth? Ensuring one big family. So as a leader duplicator, you're talking about this all the time. You're talking about this core value of one big family, because you want your teams working together. You want them supporting each other. And that's why it's important that all along your leadership journey, from producer to leader, producer, all the way up, you're embodying one big family so that your team's doing the same. That way, if you've got teams in in the USA, teams in South Africa, teams in Asia, teams in Europe, you can plug them in together. Like I have in, my organizations over the years, Facebook groups for my European team, an Australian team, an African team. And so when someone comes to me and go, hey, I've got a prospect in Nairobi, where can I send them? I go, hey, let me introduce you to my leader in Nairobi, and they'll give you all the details, right? And so we want to create that culture so everyone's helping everyone all around the world. Okay, strategically partnering with cross-line leaders in your masterminding. And so you might be doing leadership events together, right? You might have, I don't know what your ranking structure is. Maybe diamond is really common. So you might have a Go Diamond weekend, and it might not be just your group. It might be your group and a cross-line leader, and you guys come together to do this Go Diamond weekend, or Go International Marketing Director weekend, or whatever it may be. Like pick the, a dream rank in your company. You can create an event around it, and, partner with other cross-line leaders. I've done that a ton, and I'm telling you, it's made me a lot of money. So one big family isn't just for my team, it's for the entire company. Okay. You're showing the world what's possible by raising to your highest potential. Hey, this is where you show the world what you're made of. You are living your life inspiring other people to be powerful leaders, to be able to live the life that you've already gotten for yourself. And it is a truly, truly blessed life to be able to do this. And I can't think of another career that allows for more fulfillment than helping people live the life of a leader in network marketing. I mean, to have the time freedom to travel around the world, have no limits on your income, it's an awesome life. And Thomas Edison, he said, if we did the things we're capable of doing, we would literally astound ourselves. And I'm telling you right now that if you do the things that you're capable of, and you will astound yourself. And I want to, give you some perspective here. Most of us have two lives: the life we live and the life we're capable of living. So just understand, I'm preaching to me too. The life that we're living right now is not the life we're capable of living. We're capable of living so much more and doing so much more. Okay. And I just want to go through the cycle of change. And this is from Dan Kelly, Daryl Connor. They wrote a handbook back in 79, handbook for group facilitators. And it talks about the emotional cycle of change. And when I read this, it hit home for me in network marketing. I said, man, this is it. So where it starts is uninformed optimism. Like people get into network marketing. I think about when I got into network marketing, I was filled with excitement and optimism. I was completely unaware of the difficulties ahead. I thought I would enroll 5, who would enroll 5, who would enroll 5. I'm going to be 6 figures by the end of the year. Like I didn't know what I didn't know, right? I was unconsciously incompetent. Uninformed optimism is kind of where we start. And then very quickly, people move to phase 2. And this is informed pessimism. This is where you realize it's not so easy. In fact, it is hard. Okay. This is, if you look at, now I have, having built big teams, owned my own network marketing company, the biggest percentage dropout is in the first 90 days. The first 3 to 4 months is when we lose the highest percentage of people, because they get into network marketing and they're at level 1. They're just like, whoo, this is awesome. And then they quickly get rejected and they're like, ooh, it's not really so easy. In fact, this is going to be hard. And they quit because they're like, I'm not willing to go through the pain. And I just want to congratulate you guys right now, because you clearly have been willing to go through the pain. You understand it's hard. You understand it's not easy, and you're doing it anyway because you understand that the prize is worth the price. Okay. And so that's one of the things that we have to be doing as leaders, is having people get the prize is worth the price. The juice is worth the squeeze. Okay. And then phase 3 is the valley of despair. I call it the valley of death. They call it the valley of despair. And you question if it's really worth it, because crazy stuff happens. You know, you build a team and you lose it. Your upline won't work with you. Your downline quits and goes to another company. And all these things are normal. It's all part of the game. But if you don't understand it's part of the game, it's part of the journey to getting to the $1 Million Club, then you go, oh man, maybe it's not worth it. And this is what kills so many capable people. And I don't want it to kill you, because you are capable and the prize is worth the price. And so my challenge, or my calling, is to help people through the valley of death and get into informed optimism. Now, this is phase 3 and 4 are pivotal points in the process, because phase 3, you get there after you have the informed pessimism. Like you knew it was going to be hard and you keep going, but then maybe it gets even harder. And at this point, you're like, well, I'm going to quit or I'm going to push through. Okay. And so for those that are willing to push through, you get to the point of informed optimism. And I would say most of you right now, I don't know where you're at, but after going through the last several weeks of the inner circle here, you should have a lot of informed optimism. Okay, the light appears at the end of the tunnel and you see a path forward. The key here, this is important, is not to stop, but to keep going. And it's a pivotal point, because there are so many people who've attended a bunch of events and they've gone to a bunch of trainings, and you know, they'll get to this point in the inner circle and it's like, I see there's a path forward, but you let the drift get in the way. What's the drift? It's when you're like floating through life. You get caught in the cycle of comfort and complacency, and you just kind of stay stuck there, and you end up drifting back to the valley of despair, where you end up quitting. Now, what I'm committed to, I'm just telling you what I am absolutely committed to right now, is each and every one of you, without exception, getting through informed optimism to success and fulfillment. I know the path. I know exactly how to do it. Okay. The key here is not to stop, to keep going. Okay. That's my intention for you. I hope it's your intention for you. So step number 5 is, of course, success and fulfillment. This is where you've pushed through, you're achieving your goals, you live the life of your dreams, the juice was worth the squeeze, and now you're able to live your life in fulfillment of simply helping other people get to where you got. Okay. Now, the barrier standing between you and the life you're capable of living is a lack of consistent execution. Okay, so how do you get from level 4 to level 5? Is you keep going. Okay, and there's so much I want to tell you here. Is you got to get that it is so possible. And it simply boils down to you doing the things that are necessary. See, once you get informed optimism, like once you know the science and you know the leadership development process and you know the things that you need to do, you know the inner game stuff, you know the tactical stuff, you know the leadership stuff, it's only a matter of execution. Okay, at this point, it's simply a matter of execution. Okay, so what I want to introduce you to help you with that process is the Conquer Your Life system, which is a structured productivity system that transforms your thinking, your actions, and your results in every area of your life. Now, I put this together not because I wanted to put it together. I put it together because I desperately needed it. I mean, over the last 20 years, having been the #1 earner in 3 different companies, having, built multiple other companies outside of network marketing, teams that are all over the world, like literally all over the world. It is a lot. Writing a bunch of different books, I mean, it's a lot. And so to keep it all in place and to be able to not just succeed financially and not just succeed in my career, but to also succeed in other areas of my life, like peace and fulfillment, my physical health, my relationships, my relationship with my children, my family. It just required a system. And there was not a system out there that I ever found. And so I created the system. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit this week, and I'll share a little bit with you next week. I'm going to share the Conquer Your Life system. And this is where you can achieve more in the next 90 days than most leaders do in an entire year. So part of the process is every 90 days, you're reviewing your purpose, your vision, your virtues, your affirmation, your daily power rituals. Okay, because it changes over time, right? Your purpose today may not be the same purpose that you have 6 months from now. It needs to be something that you're constantly reinventing. It includes 90-day challenges or quarterly goals, weekly game plans, daily tracking, weekly reviews. There's even a 90-day review. I kind of call it the 90-day year. It's compressing a year into 90 days. It's doing more in 90 days than most people do an entire year. It's doing in 1 year what most people, it takes 4 years to do. Okay. And it is how, like, I can't tell you, it's been hundreds and hundreds of times people have said, I don't know how you do everything that you do. I'll tell you, if I didn't have a system like this, there's no way I could do it. My biggest challenge in everything that I do is always overwhelmed. Okay. And this is what has kept me sane and allowed me to stay amazingly productive. And so what does life mastery look like? Now, I want you to succeed. And I know the reason why you join the inner circle is because you want to succeed in your career, in your network marketing career. But there are many different areas of life. And if you succeed at the highest level in network marketing, but you burn your life away and you burn your health away, the money's not going to be meaningful. I want you fulfilled in all areas of your life. I want you to be very, very wealthy. I also want you to have a lot of inner peace. I also want you to have abundant relationships. I want to teach you how to multiply your money. One of the challenges that so many leaders, and I've experienced this from personal friends of mine in my organization, who they get to $1 million a year, and I give a little bit of financial coaching, and they're like, hey, I know you had a Ferrari. I want to go get a exotic car. And I go, okay, it makes sense. Buy it 4 years old, so the depreciation's already gone. Buy it right. You'll be able to sell it for pretty close to what you paid for it a few years later, and it will make sense. What do? They go buy a brand new Rolls Royce, a brand new Lamborghini. I want you to keep your money. It's not how much money you make, it's how much you keep. Okay. These are things that I learned the hard way from investing money in crazy things and amazing things, right? Fitness. Fuel your personal growth as a category of life, and then fun, your passion, your hobbies, making life an adventure. Okay, so these are what I call the 8 F's. Okay, and so you got your faith, your family, your field, your finances, your fitness, your friends, your fuel, and your fun. So I'm going to give you guys an assignment, a couple assignments for this week. And the first one is a life mastery assessment. This is where you're going to take a little assessment that I created that's going to help you be able to look at your life and see where you want improvement. Now, this doesn't mean that you're not going to improve in your career. Like, what I think is true is that your finances control almost like a lot of other areas of your life, right? Money doesn't make you happy. Doesn't make you happy, but man, it makes it makes life a lot more interesting. I've been rich and I've been poor, and I'd much rather be happy rich than poor. I've been through some depression. I'd rather be rich and depressed than poor and depressed all day long. Okay. So we're always going to be working on our career, but we also want to focus on some other areas of life. And so I'm going to provide a link. When this is done, I'll make sure you guys have access to the download link for this. And the download link you'll get this week isn't the entire system. It's a very small subset of the system just for your homework. Okay, for your assignment. And it's a life mastery assessment. So you're going to answer these questions and you're going to get a score. For each category, you're going to get a score, and you're going to multiply that by 2. And that'll be your 0 to 100 score that you're going to put on the next section. Now, there's some instructions in the PDF that you'll download. But basically, I want you to look at this and look at where your life is to determine, like, all right, what do I need to be focused on? Okay. And we're also going to set 90-day goals. Okay, so part of the process is setting quarterly goals, right? There's 13 weeks in a quarter, there's 4 quarters in a year. And so we're going to get very, very intentional with setting a goal over the next 90 days. Now, I'm going to tell you from a business standpoint, every success I've had in network marketing, I can point back to a 90-day run, a 90-day challenge, a 90-day all-out massive action goal. And so what I'm going to challenge you guys to do is to set a big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal for the next 90 days. And here's why. Timing wise, I don't think there's a better time for you to set a big goal, because you've spent the last 7 weeks here getting detailed training on the inner game, getting detailed training on the tactics, and getting detailed training on a leadership development system that absolutely works every time you work it. Okay. If you are very well prepared. Now, if you hadn't been through the inner circle, you can do this. It's just not going to be as effective. See, when I did my 90-day run, after I worked with a mentor who gave me nowhere close to the amount of coaching that you guys have gotten over the last several weeks, nowhere close. I got some insights that changed things for me. And when I did a 90-day run, stepping into my power as a leader, as I've coached you guys on, I created crazy results. I sponsored 30 people in 30 days. I built a team of 10,000 people in 2 years. My life changed dramatically because I decided to make a 90-day run. Okay. And so you're going to set a goal, and you're going to set basically 2 or 3 goals. And number 1, you're going to set your business goal. Okay, so in the checkbox here, that would be your field. Your field is your career. It's your business. Okay, it's your field of work. Okay, so you're going to set a goal for that for sure. And it'll be a SMART goal. I'm not going to go through all of you guys have probably been through lots of goal setting training. A SMART goal means it's specific, right? It's measurable, it's achievable. It's relevant, meaning it's in line with what you're up to in life, and it's time-based. Like relevant meaning it fits your purpose, right? And your vision for your life. Is it relevant for where you're going? And then time-based is a deadline. So 90 days. Okay, so you're going to set a very specific goal. It might be a certain rank in your company, right? It might be that you're already at a high rank, and it's maybe to increase volume at a certain level, and it may be to help other people hit a certain rank, like the leaders that you're working with. A lot of my goals over the years, in a 90-day time frame, it wasn't necessarily me hitting another rank because I was already at the top. It was focusing on a particular leader within my organization, and it was focusing on helping them achieve that level, achieve their next rank, because that would, move my business along. Okay. And one of the things, just a side note, is if you want to hit rank, one of the quickest ways to hit rank is to like dig down into the people in your organization and help them hit rank. Okay. Help them set their goal, make their goal your goal, and that naturally will push you to the next rank when you help a handful of other people hit rank within their teams. Okay, so you're going to have your goal. Number two, you're going to have your purpose for the goal. The question you ask yourself is, why must I achieve this? Like, why is it that I have a fire inside me to make this goal a reality in the next 90 days? Okay, so this is just my process that I've used for goal setting for 20 years. Number one is your goal. Number two is your purpose behind the goal. And number three, where the rubber meets the road, is your action plan for the goal. What are you willing to actually go do? What are you going to do on a daily basis? How many people are you going to reach out to? How many calls are you going to make? What are you going to do social media wise? Are you going to do, how many, lives a week are you going to do? How many, posts are you going to do? Like, this is where you're spelling out, like, this is what I'm going to do to achieve the goal. The key here is getting fired up and going all in. And so I'm going to challenge you guys. We're 7 weeks. Like, you've learned a ton. Now it's time to put that goal into reality. Like, let's go create some tangible results. Now, a lot of you have already created some pretty great great results. Let's go create, like, literally mind-blowing results. Let's go show the world what we're made of. Okay, so your assignment is to do two things. Number one, complete your life mastery assessment. Okay, and next week I'm going to go through a process that will you've likely never done something like this, but it is a very tangible, specific framework for succeeding in all 8 F's of life. In fact, there's more than 8, because there'd be multiple categories in some of the F's, right? And so I'm going to walk you through that. Very, very excited, but I want you to complete your life mastery assessment. So do that. Create your 90-day business goal and 1 to 2 other categories. Okay, and so you'll see in here the different categories: faith, family, field, finances, fitness, friends, fuel, and fun. You'll have this in the download. Okay, so you're going to create a business goal for your network marketing business and 1 to 2 other categories. Okay, I really would my coaching is not to go all in on all 8 categories. If you focus on all 8 categories and you're like, all right, I'm gonna like crush it in every area, you don't have focus, and by chasing 8, you don't get any. Chase a couple and nail those 2 or 3. Okay. Now, with your accountability groups, you're going to meet them. You're going to go through your biggest ahas and what you're committed to implementing. You're going to share your 90-day goals and your purpose behind them. You can also share what you learned within the life mastery and anything else that serves the group. Okay. And so this is your homework, my friends. Let me stop the share here real quick. And I just want to say this. Going back to the rules of engagement, do the work. Okay. We're at the final stretch here, and it is so important for you to do the work. In this case, these simple assignments: go through the life mastery assessment and set your goals. And I just want to say that I have so much certainty with where you're headed based on the knowledge that you've gotten, the coaching that you've got, and what you've put in so far. This is really just the beginning. There's been a lot of you who have asked, like, hey, is there any kind of ongoing mentorship or coaching after the 8 weeks? And, the answer is yes. I'm going to talk about that next week. I've spent a lot of times over the last few weeks, because even initially people are like, I want to work with you after the 8 weeks. So we've designed something that I am flat out like, oh my God, this is like, if we could provide the most value that we possibly can at a price that's just insane, where you have nothing to lose. I'm going to talk about that next week. Whether you do it or not, it's cool. Like, I think it would be crazy not to, because of where you've gone and where I want to help you get. And so I'll talk about that next week. Okay. But listen, I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. Let's do the work, and I'll see you guys on Thursday's Q&A call. Love you. God bless.